Hey everybody, I know I'm doing a bunch of these short videos. I'm at the site what's called Fort Bayard National Cemetery. I'm still in Silver City, New Mexico. So Fort Bayard National Cemetery, it was actually a fort at one time, originally established in 1866. It did become a cemetery, and actually, aside from being like what we would be familiar with as far as like a military, as far as like a military fort goes, it did have that military purpose on its inception, where you would have a garrison, you would have troops, armament, and armory. Generally, at that time in 1866, we're still looking at, Manifest Destiny, the expansion out west. The Mexican-American War had ended about 16 years, or maybe even 20 years prior. Mexican-American War ended in 1848, I believe. 1846, 1848. Let's say 1846. Let's keep the math simple. So 1846 to 56, 20 years later, this is established. This is still a territory. New Mexico does not become a state until 1912. So the forts were being established for the protection of the settlers, kind of quell some of the Indian uprisings that were going on, and it was a militaristic fort. As time changed, New Mexico gained statehood. The Indian wars weren't as prevalent. It just changed roles. Since they had the infrastructure and the facilities, I think at one point, I'm at the front gate now if you're looking behind me. I think at one point it did change to a hospital setting, and then it was a training site. I'm sure I'm going to get more information when I go inside. I usually try to get information before I get to a place like this, but I didn't this time. So I'm going to pause it, and as we drive through, I'm going to do some narrations. I'm going to apologize in advance because I'm not home, so I can't splice these videos together like I had in previous YouTube shots. That's why you guys are getting so many a day, because I'm trying to capture it and send it, because I don't have my laptop. I'm traveling, and how that helps me is that it keeps my cell phone from backing up with a bunch of video footage. All right, I'm going to pause it for now. I'll continue in a bit. We're driving in. Belinda's driving, but she was just... and I'll work it out and do some more, but she's telling me that, which looks very familiar, these are all the barracks. So I would have to say this is probably circa World War II. World War I, they were still using a lot of the tent structures, or sometimes the barracks went up about 4 to 6 feet in wood, and then they were tent. But from my experiences being in the Army in different locations, this looks like the architecture and the infrastructure of what it would have been in World War II. These might have been like NCO quarters, but I'm sure we're going to get a museum. We'll get to a museum and I'll explain a little bit more towards it. Off in the distance, it looks like there's a newer structure that we're approaching, and we'll probably get more about that later. Now, there was a little bit of the history I saw where it changed functions a few times, ends up being mainly as a hospital at a training site. I would like to really know, which I'll probably find out what kind of units were here. Numbered units, infantry, or the infantry artillery. I'm going to guess at its inception, probably cavalry, horse-mounted, being that was the most prevalent need at the time when they were expanding out west during the late 1800s, 1860s. So we're going to be driving straight through to the museum, but I just wanted to point out that this is like a Quonset hut, which would have been Korean War era going into Vietnam era. We didn't use those. I don't see those structures a lot when I was in the 80s. So we're approaching the officer quarters, which this looks very familiar. And I forgot the fort I was with. I was with my buddy John Mosier. John, if you watch this video, I know you watch a lot of my videos. Mentioned in the dialogue, what fort were we at? Remember when I went in there and I put the cavalry hat on? You took me and your son there. Don't these look like the same officer structures? What happened to my... Oh, it's still going. Sorry. This looks like the same officer structures. I thought my phone died. But John Mosier, if you're watching this, see if you could put in the comment section what was that? This just looks just like it. We were in... Oh man, I forgot what state we were in, John. You got to remind me. But this seriously looks like the same exact spot we were at when I was visiting you and your family. Okay, all you viewers, what had happened was my phone went down to 5% and I lost my screen, so I thought I was totally gone.
Looks like the museum is closed, or the tour guides are closed.
Now, one thing about these structures. Oh, and there's a statue I want to go talk about in a moment. But one thing about these structures, you see it like on the Pacific coast. All the older forts or the older structures that are in California look very similar to the ones in Hawaii. But a lot of times you could be far away from any of these other forts. But the thing was, the contractors who they were contracting with at the time, say for 10 years, they would have like a main contractor. So of course they use the same. Can you turn your car on real quick? My battery's about ready to die. I'm going to switch it over to my portable one. Bad planning on my part, everybody. My phone battery's about ready to die. But I brought my trusty spare, so I'm going to hook it up in a second. But the one thing about it is that they had the same plans. They had the same architectural designs. As long as it was bought off, why recreate the wheel? So what they would do, whether it be a California or Hawaii, or here in New Mexico, or maybe somewhere in Utah, the military installations would have very like-looking buildings, because within the same 10, 15 years, they're using the same contractor with the same designs, the same floor plans. So hopefully I'll be able to get some juice out of my portable device. It is so bright out here. I don't know if you guys will be able to see this. This is talking about the Medal of Honor knows no rank or color. So we're going to be talking a little bit about the Buffalo Soldiers who were stationed here. It's really bright. I'm going to go up to the statue. One thing that I kind of know ahead of time regarding Buffalo Soldiers, before I come up to the statue, is that they got that name from the Indians of the area. I don't know how to say whatever tribe that named it. I don't know if the tribes had like languages or not. I know the Powhatans and the Indians back east had a little bit of a different dialect. So let's see here. So what I do know when it comes to Buffalo Soldiers, the Negro or black soldiers of the time, they were all in the same group, and the Indians looked at their hair, their dark colored, the curly hair, and they look like buffalo, range buffalo. So a contrast to the white soldiers, they called the Negro soldiers Buffalo Soldiers. So Corporal Clinton Graves, Company C, 9th U.S. Cavalry. And I want to say, I think Custer was 7th Cavalry. I think Custer was 7th. Anyways, on January 26, 1877, while on patrol in the Florida mountains near Deming, New Mexico, Corporal Graves performed an act of heroism, saving 6 soldiers and 3 Navajo scouts from attack by 40 to 50 Chiricahua Apache. Corporal Graves was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor on June 6, 1879, plaque placed by the Fort Bayard Historic Preservation Society. And he looks like he was one of the Buffalo Soldiers. You know what's interesting? The lever action rifle was out at the time. He has a big caliber. He still looks like that could be 45-70 rounds, which the range rifle was. The lever action that we're using were 45-70s. I have a 45-70 lever action at home. That looks like the size of the rounds I would use. But he is firing. He has cartridges on his belt, but he's firing that looks like a flintlock. Not even a cap and ball. It looks like a flintlock rifle. I'm trying to get the trigger mechanism, and I am not good on antiques, but I'm gonna say that does not look apropos to the munitions he has on his belt. I know there's other firearms aficionados that can tell me different. If so, please comment in the comment section below. He does have a pistol on his side, so I don't know if that's his cartridges for his pistol. There's no way. That looks like a 45-70 lever action round. Anyways, let's not split hairs. Buffalo Soldier Memorial. This plaque is to recognize some of those who helped make this memorial possible. So now we immediately move from acknowledging the Buffalo Soldier to acknowledging the people who put the plaque in place. All right, I'm going to skip this. I would like to learn more about. Thank you very much for putting that plaque in place, all you people. Very, very nicely put, but I want to learn a lot more about the Buffalo Soldier. I wouldn't guess. That would have to be a revolver, and I would say that would be like a 45 long Colt revolver that he would have. on his side. You know, I have the, I'm fortunate, I have the fortune to be, you know, military retired, and I have the time to do this stuff. I know a lot of people, you know, I'd stumble across places. I've driven through towns that had things like this I didn't even know of, or maybe I didn't have the time to. So I get it if you're not able to do it, but thanks for following along so far. So this is the building where the museum is housed. I think we missed it. So it closed up at 2 p.m. No biggie. I'll look up some of the stuff online. So there's guided tours here. But one thing, the reason why I'm filming this is I wanted to point out how this building, architecture, everything's up, you know, is kept up really, really nice. And this one's a little bit run down. Now, believe it or not, these were officer quarters. These were single, at the time they were built, they were for single dwellings, single family dwellings. But what they would also do, these were so big, not only to house the officers, you would never see this today. An officer is going to get a regular sized house, which we're accustomed to today. But in the time of the expansion out west, Civil War, even maybe going up to World War I, the officer quarters were so big like this because not only did they have to house the families, also they would have servants, and they would have certain rooms on the bottom floor that were used for meetings where they would have their other company level officers come in and they would discuss training or tactics and stuff like that. So not only were these buildings designed and purposed to hold the family, it was also a place of business. And the one I went into when I was with my buddy John Mosier looked just like this, but as you enter it, it explains all that. It explains that there are certain rooms that certain family members don't go into. There are certain rooms that the servants don't go into. Almost like what you would kind of consider the White House today, where the White House is a place of residence and a place of business also. These were like, I guess, for lack of a better analogy, little White Houses. But that's why they were so big. They would never be this big today. When I was at March Air Force Base, I was a E8, and I ended up getting an officer's house. It had a couple more rooms, and it did have a servant quarter in the back, but it was nowhere near the size. It wasn't anything that would not be compared to what anybody's living in today. It was definitely a single house dwelling. Something I just recognized, and the military, we still follow this pattern today. I did not realize this while I was at that Buffalo Soldier Monument, but this is the base commander's house. I'm gonna say I'm guessing, but I'm pretty darn sure. This is the base commander's house, and what I'm walking through, it would actually be the parade field, and then these are all the other officers' homes. And this is very much like anyone who's watching this as prior service, if you've been on any base that was built around World War II time frame, they're all like this. The parade field's in the middle. You got your main officers' homes there, and then your base officer house would be here. This is the house of the guy who's running the place. And hopefully there's a plaque up here. If I'm wrong, I'll admit I'm wrong, but let's see. Chaplain Captain Allen Allensworth established a school at Fort Bayard. Don't tell me this is a school. A couple people notoriety. I think this is just general history. There's a really good, okay, so this guy has the cartridges that the other soldier had and the statue, the cartridges on his belt, but I can't see his rifle very well. I may be wrong on all that, you guys, so what is this? I can barely read it. Cuba. What? USA, Cuba. Puerto Rico, Philippine Islands, Spanish-American War. I can't read it. This has got to be Spanish-American War, but I can't read what this says. This says USA, that says Cuba. This says Puerto Rico, this says Philippine Islands. So this is Teddy Roosevelt, Rough Rider era. I cannot read United. Something United. That might be some, oh, Navy? Army, Navy, United. I can't read that. Something war. Spanish War. Veterans. I can't read it. All right. So this must have been an installation that was, that trained guys that ended up in the Spanish-American War. I really want to find out what this building is. I don't think it's a school. I think this would be the commander's, the installation commander's building. Now, Like I said when I first started this video, this property went through a few iterations of purpose and what they were using it for. Visitors, Yucca Lodge is a closed facility. It's a lodge now, but it very well could have started. There's no doubt. I mean, the commander would have come out here. That's where all the troops would have assembled. And any other base would be configured this way. And that's where the officers would be. And that's where the main flagpole is. So I'm guessing the origin, this was the base commander's house. Let me zoom out, come on. This was the base commander's house, but it could have been realigned to be a school. It could have been realigned to be a community center, now with some kind of lodge. But the way that the design architecture is, I'm guessing that's what it was. These little stairs right here in this area, this very well may have been where officer stables were, or as things evolved, that would have been the commander's garage. When I was at March Air Force Base, the only garage was the commander's. Okay, here's some things here. 1885 hospital. It's not that structure we're looking at. Built 1 year before the Apache Wars. 1900s, 1920s. One of the 5 TB hospitals at the facility. This might be saying that it was, the structure was standing in this open spot at one time. Oh, so the cut stone terrace wall remains about 200 yards northwest of this sign, so the structure's gone. During the final years of World War II, German POWs were housed in buildings near the north end of the parade ground. So this is the parade ground. The prisoners substituted for maintenance staff serving in the U.S. military and were paid Army private wages. A lot of good history about the Italian and German POWs that were held here all through the United States. Solarium is gone. For soldiers afflicted with tuberculosis. So this is talking about, it became the Army's first TB sanitarium. So this is talking about some of the evolution that this place went through when it came to what the structures were for. So walking, I know if we were at the museum, it would probably have more of an explanation of this, but you see where these posts are, these 3 things? They're pretty much saying what was in this plot of land right here. So look at that, officers' quarters, and that's a single dwelling. That's not saying multiple officers live there. That's just saying that that's a single dwelling. Fort Bayard's bands were in great demand for events in surrounding communities as well as for their military duties. So that's a band. Apache Scouts were used by the U.S. Army in the 1870s and 1880s to assist in locating bands who had left the reservation. In spite of their service, some of the scouts were deported to Florida and later Fort Sill, Oklahoma. You never get off the reservation. Like Colonel Kurtz, you never get off the boat. Change in tactic. Up until Custer's defeat in 1876, cavalry were taught to shoot revolvers from the horse and get dismounted to shoot their single-shot carbines. Maybe what that's on that other statue, maybe that was what it was, a single-shot carbine. Every 4th man was a horse holder. Okay, so that's just showing some tactics. I'm not going to walk around the whole thing. I'm already at 18, almost 19 minutes here. So I'm going to conclude this one as part 1. My mouth is getting really dry. There's a few more things to see. Unfortunately, the museum is closed down. It's very peaceful out here. We still got to go to the National Cemetery portion, which I'm sure some Medal of Honor people are interned there. But there's a good idea of what we've seen so far. All right, I'm going to conclude this. This is going to be part 1 of 2 because it just takes, I got to cut it off now because if I don't, it's going to take a hell of a long time, a heck of a long time. I got to keep this G-rated for family and friends. A heck of a long time to upload. So goodbye for now. We'll pick up later.